So you do have those differences where now imagine the attitude of someone in Congo towards their particular, vernacular language. If you grew up, let's say, in the city, for them, it's all the questions comes into where am I going to use it? Why am I going to use it? When am I going to use it? I'm not using it for fun. I'm not using it to make moves on let's say on a girl. I'm not using it at school. I'm not using it. The government is not enforcing it as something that should happen.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Vambo AI in Africa podcast. First time doing that. With my special guest today, Kim from Ambani Africa, and I'm Ishe from Vambo. Kim, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I thought you were gonna say my special friend, but you know what? It's fine. I can be your guest. It's fine.
It's too soon for all of that, Kim.
So we're not yet there.
We're working our way to friendship. Let's see how the podcast goes.
See, I don't like you that much. Okay, it's fine. Ishe. It's fine.
Okay. For the viewers who don't know, please just let us know what you do at Ambani.
So, CTO at Ambani Africa, but that's not the only thing that I do from a tech perspective. I'm also founder of MindCiti. At Ambani Africa, I'm mostly responsible for the technical side of things and making sure that the team is doing what they have to do from a technical side of things, the development and whatever research that has to do with the tech research. But also a very important role there for me is the bridge with the business side, which I have to be involved as a CTO. You sitting there in between, causing fire and putting it down. So it's very much that aspect of what do you do to make sure that the business still runs from a business perspective, and the tech contribute to that business to grow. Then from a MindCiti perspective, because I've been within entrepreneurship, especially in edtech for whatever longest time, I'm wearing a lot of hats because of developing, funding, managing, engaging. It's got its own interesting journey, which is also very interesting for me. But yeah, and nothing special to you because you definitely do the same technical stuff with Vambo. So
Yeah, just similar vibes.
yeah, same stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, that's mostly what happens. But from a broader probably explanation of what Ambani does, we on this journey to ensure that we are bridging the educational gap, especially from a foundation phase and intermediate phase, ECD, early childhood development, where we provide the content in different languages, right? So an example will be that you would have a mathematic content on addition, and we ensure that it is provided to a learner in different languages, and we focus on African languages mostly, and to try and bridge that gap of education within the continent. And we also then use technology. So core thing is multilingualism, but also is the technology piece of it, because we take our stuff in different engines or using different stacks, which would have a gaming specific stack and you would have a normal software development environment. So you would have it in augmented reality, which we use mostly with our set of books, and learners get to scan that particular book or with parents, and they pick a language to then interact with that particular item that will come up, and then they can hear whatever is there. But that has been the beginning, and it's a piece of what the bigger part of what exactly happens, right? So the biggest platform which we actually going to be, not sure when the podcast is going to be released, or when it's going to air, but it should probably be after we've already released. We're releasing a bigger version of the platform, which allows for educators, organizations, institutions. We call them islands. So we create islands, which is more like white labeling. So you would go onto the bigger platform, and then you've got access to thousands and thousands of content, and then you create your own version of it, and then you can now pick the content that you would want, and then you just have it into your particular channel, and you can then administer that to your target audience. So customizing and making sure that educators are also having content being created a lot easier and provided to them. So that's where I would say, if I were to go deeper into those aspects, right, into that aspect of Ambani, that's where most of the work actually happens there. And obviously, there's a lot of engagement and usage with terms of AI and stuff, which we will discuss a lot further on that front. But then, because there's also quite a lot of usage of AI within MindCiti, there it's very much well-being. It's very much work readiness. It's very much career readiness. But then we do a lot of simulations there. And the simulations are to then get someone ready. So we would work, for instance, on an onboarding process with people. And we do provide what we call prescription. So we'll provide your prescription, which then guide you to the different types of content, reading content, and assessment that you can then take, and quizzes, and all that are meant to then get you ready for your journey in your career. But then we use a lot of AI to try and reduce the costs of access to support, immediate feedback, how we provide immediate feedback to people, how they can actually do an interview prep, because you can also go and simulate an interview prep there. So you talk, and then it gives you immediate feedback in terms of how you've been managing. You want to do a pitch, you want to do an elevator pitch, and you want to practice. You go on there and then use text to speech, and then it gives you immediate feedback. So it's how do we bridge, all those long period of, when do I get feedback for something? When do I get to engage? Because those are areas that we see that if we do not use technology and the tools and AI to bridge those things, we going to be further behind in terms of supporting and the development of people. So I'm not gonna ask you what Vambo does, because I know what Vambo does, but the audience probably would want to know as well.
Okay. Hopefully they do know, because this is our podcast. What else are they doing? But actually, so we are a little part of what you mentioned. We are the African language AI people. We specialize just in that. Like you said, there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of bridging the gap between the problems that we have and what kind of technology we're using. But actually, I just wanted to bring you back a little bit, and this is actually something that we understand firsthand as well. But just for sake of everyone, what kind of problems are you facing specifically in languages, AI, Africa? Those three.
I think that combination is already the problem.
It's dangerous.
I'm not
That's
gonna
why,
lie.
that's why we exist.
Listen, that combination is a problem, and I know it's a beautiful problem because we're passionate to try and solve it. And I mean, we have discussed with Vambo a couple of times in terms of implementing your APIs and text into our space. And I know the very first time that I actually engaged with it was with Judo first. It was because we wanted to find a way that we could translate automate the translation process of our video, because our content, so there's different layers, right? So our content are text-based, video, and then you've got game-based. Now, that creates another complexity with what you already just mentioned, just technology, language, and Africa, right? So when you put that, and then equals, a lot of figuring out. But then at the end of the day, we definitely hope that whenever you put that, you say equals Vambo, for instance, right? Then we can take a Vambo and then we plug it into wherever else, because our the core of what we do is not to create a large language model. No, it's probably to contribute from a perspective of what do you need, because we work with a lot of educators. We work with setting up libraries where they can then create books into different languages, or they can create like audio of those particular books and stuff like that. But the challenges are a lot more, because I always say we already have challenges just without even the technology piece of it, right? We
Yes.
sit in a room and then you've got one person speaking their language, the other person speaking their language, this other one speaking their language. And then this other one has got dialects of that, and the other one has got dialects of that. By the time you just say, guys, let's have a war, but let's not shoot each other, you basically telling each other, yeah, speak in your own language, no one else would know it, and then you guys would think that you are fighting amongst each other because you all have different languages. But it's got its beauty when people look at it from a perspective of, but this is what makes us, this is the culture, right? This is what makes it authentic. But in terms of a unity, it becomes difficult, and it goes back to what you were asking, which is technology, language in Africa. When we say plus plus plus, at the end of it, you want unity. What is that unity? What is that thing that now going to unify all of that? But already from a general perspective, it's a difficult thing, and we've had that challenge from the time that we first engaged with Vambo, as I said, and then we started exploring different options, because we needed to understand who has done it. But I can promise you that up until today, that particular problem has not been solved as yet as we wanted, and that's not because it's not possible, but it's because there's a lot that needs to be put into African languages when it comes to its diverse range of options, from a language to dialect to this. There's way too many. There's way too many, and that's something that needs to be. It gotten down to just say, can we prioritize? Then we're like, okay, which ones are available? And then you will say, okay, now there is Zulu that is available. There's Afrikaans, and then there is. But then you get to a point where you go and sell to someone, and then what makes them proud is, am I represented? Then they start asking you, don't you have Ndebele? And then you start scratching your head. Now they look at the CTO, and then they're like, but isn't OpenAI doing everything, right? Because of their view of what it means when they see one or two languages. So now you sit there and you have to constantly. So it's an interesting, longer, process or bigger challenge in my view, which you need to explain to me how you guys are really, dealing with it. Because in Congo alone, I know that in Congo they have about over 400 dialects, right? And that is just one country in the Central Africa. And at the same time, we know very well that when you get in a room and you greet someone in their respective language, they already think that you are their friends. You can already get a smile out of them, or they already get to, Where did you learn that? And then it becomes easy to communicate.
Definitely.
So that already brings that connection. And, what you guys are also trying to do is to already automatically make sure that there's that bridge, and then you can have that connection. You are able to then. So yeah, I would be, I would want to understand how you are spending your head coding those things, man. It's
Well, first of all, if I'd figured it out, I wouldn't have a job anymore. But okay, to be honest, it's actually very complicated. Because before we even get into all of these kind of nuances of how can we translate that language to that language to that language, you need to bring it all the way back and say what even is a language, because there's so much debate amongst linguists, natives, everyone over, is this a language, is this a dialect, is this a variation, what is that, first of all. And then if you're going to say this is a language, like Zulu is a language, and how are we classifying these languages? Because it's also meant to be used, like in situations like yours, to integrate the API and everything like that. So we've actually gotten to a point where I'd actually call it more of a compromise, where we've decided not to make any separate distinctions for ourselves. We don't decide what the languages are. So we've taken what they call the ethnologue. Yeah, it's an organization that does language classifications and everything. And basically, we're just it's because it's an international standard. Basically, we've decided what they've called a language is a language. It might be up for debate amongst people, but it's the only kind of reliable way for for you to have consistent language codes and everything. And then we actually had to find the ones that are African, and by African being natively spoken anywhere in Africa. And we did a backlog of all of the languages that fit in under that branch, and we just kind of trying to map out everything that's going on in Africa, and we came up on, exact number should be 2,104 African languages. That's just at the language level.
that's not going
Then
lower.
we're going to go into dialects, and then we're going to go into code switching as well, which is another thing that can become like a little bit debatable whether or not it's a language. There was actually about 5 years ago. There's actually a situation where you probably know Sheng, but Sheng basically being code switched Swahili and English. They mix a little bit of slang and other stuff in there, but basically that's what it is. And the idea was to have Sheng recognized as an official language, and they'd made a proposal, came up with a language code and everything, and that one was rejected. It was pretty controversial at the time, but that's one of those things where, as an organization ourselves, we can't then declare that Sheng has to be a language, because then you're doing that everywhere, and you're trying to trying to hear like a million different conflicting arguments about, no, this is a language, no, it's a dialect. So at that base level, ethnologue languages are languages. We leave it at that. And then for languages that are code switched, we we don't call them dialects as per se. When it's code switched, we just have you've got the language code as the dominant language, and then the secondary one, that's the code switching. And then for actual dialects, in quotes, it's just mostly about the region, because you'll often find that these are kind of like based in certain provinces, so they speak Shona slightly different in east, south,
And
that kind of thing.
we're sorry to cut. That also has been one of the issue. You would find someone who speaks Tswana or Sesotho, but then again, they would ask you, which one from where is this?
Yes.
And then that becomes a reason for them to even either increase percentage of appetite to your product or not, or decrease, mainly because of which one. But can you understand both? Yeah, but I'm from. So the dialects and all of that has got an impact as well within, the way the business has now to run, the decisions that you have to make, the compromises that you have to make, and things like that. So I just thought of it when you were mentioning this aspects of the dialects and the different places where they actually have to be spoken to.
Yeah, on this one, there's actually we were at an expo. I think it was, jeez, when was that one? It was in November. Anyway, we were at an expo in Joburg. You actually came to that one. And we actually had someone who came to our stand who was trying out a translation tool. And I remember he said, because we had, which one did we have? We had Tswana as one of the languages. And he said, okay, you've got Tswana, but no, I speak Setswana. And I remember thinking, but did I get this wrong? I look it up and everything.
You started questioning yourself when you had to go through.
But, unfortunately, I think what he meant was just about the regions, and then it sounds
Yeah,
different. So, maybe amongst people who speak Tswana, they'll make that distinction. But in terms of the language codes, the ISO language codes, there's no difference given. So when I'm trying to work with, 44 African languages now. I don't know if we're not announcing the next number.
Okay.
But anyway, when I'm trying to work with X number of languages, it's actually very difficult to, isolate everything on individual case by cases,
But a question that I want to ask you within this is, and I mean, obviously, this is probably something that you either answer or not, but are you finding yourself or yourselves making more of decisions based on based decisions driven by your either interests to break boundaries, and by breaking boundaries I would say you probably we want to be the place where they are, where we've got all the languages in Africa, we've got all the dialects in Africa, or every progress that is being made is now just based on business decisions, where because we personally had and I know that sometimes sitting there with at Ambani with Mukundi, who's the CEO, you you sometimes have those conversations where you're like, okay, it's not technology wise, it's not yet there, but do we want to get there, or is it because we've got people that will pay for us to focus on that, or is it because we should just have many? So it's those become some of the bridges when you speak about from being a CTO, you're not just going to be doing the stuff. You have to look at the language. How far is the technology going at this point in time? Are we able to create something that is not yet there? How long will it take us? Then we startups, we don't have a R&D division. We don't have people that are sitting there.
You
being
are the
paid.
division.
You are that division. You are the do the research, and if the research had to be done in 2 years, well, do it in 2 weeks, because we have to go respond to a proposal whether we can or cannot do.
The tender's about to close.
You just have to do it. Go do the research. So yeah, what would often be some of your guys, drivers for decision making, especially in a space where it's really not easy, and we are digitizing a lot of these things that has not been fully document. And I mean, our work, I mean, we work with institutions, right? We work with Northwest University, even currently. And then there are one university in the country that ensures that they focus on, I think it's 4 or 5 languages that are being taught. So if there needs to be a translator in the room that is translating for those people, that's part of their, pillars. They have to do that.
Yeah, Northwest has done a great job at that.
So they've pushed those boundaries and things like that. So yeah, what would then be your guys' drivers for decisions and stuff?
Okay. So basically, we did start completely for the love of the game, because there was that old demo that you've probably never seen. I'm a little bit embarrassed of it. It was quite bad.
Can we get it on GitHub?
It was no. You are not. I've buried that code deep. I buried it. There's no traces of it.
Nothing.
It's never coming out again. But anyway, from that point, it was we weren't really actually being business driven by the business decisions. We just kind of looked at what we have available, what we know, what can we start doing, and we then came up with something that had most peculiar mix of languages that you'd think of. It worked with English, Afrikaans, and Shona. No business decision behind that, but it's like, okay, so there's an idea. Let's see what we can do from there and where. Came up with a little something. It's like, okay, that works. This can do something. Maybe there's some potential. And kind of as we've evolved, a lot of things are now a lot more driven by the business decisions and such. Because of course at the end of the day, if I want, and I still do, thousands in GPUs, money's not going to come from the sky. So because of what the business impact is, that's going to be a big driver. But still, at the same time, there are particular decisions that might not fit into a profitability kind of thing. But because of this being like a very particular area, we might just still think this language hasn't been explored with this language. Like, for example, what could I say? We've never seen like a Wolof to Kikuyu translation, and maybe there's absolutely no business need for that. But it's kind of a way to keep doing the mental exercises and learning new things actually, basically, because you'll find a lot of surprising things along the way.
Business decisions, and for the love of it, decisions, and you always have to be in the middle, because there are days as a CTO you just want to go and sit and explore, but you can't just go and sit and explore, because your exploration needs to lead to what needs to work for tomorrow. It's not one of those, oh no, I just wanted to do it and then it was fun.
Just for fun.
On GitHub and let's see if someone else is going to do. You don't have those.
If you want to explore for fun, you should get into academics.
Yeah, well, and you probably have known I've been in academics for years now. So I would lecture at a university as well. It always been a fun experience, but you realize that there's a lot that we do from a startup perspective that sometimes is far in terms of research than what someone will then be sitting there in academic, doing for academia. They will work on that research for 2 years, right? So they started with, for instance, a research problem, how isiZulu is used, blah blah blah, whatever. They start with it, And then you've got your masters, which you probably do within 2 to 3 years or so. By the time they actually finish, there's been 10 versions of Vambo AI on isiZulu itself, just that piece. It's been, improved 10 times. By the time they actually set their research question, it was 2 years ago. So it was probably on version 3, right? So the evolution and the development that happens when you are in a startup, when you are doing the amount of research that we do is extreme. So what I started doing quite a lot as well, been doing it quite for a few, even within Ambani and MindCiti, it's been looking at how to set up frameworks. And then those are our internal frameworks, which those internal frameworks we can then also either share it with others at a cost or whatever. But we then look at through all the different times that we spent and researchers, how do we then look at those processes as actual research output and framework that you can use for the development of something, which I definitely believe that within your structure, there's also been, different versions of framework on how to get to this, to this, to this, to that, this, to this, to that, and you've probably evolved within those particular spaces as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
So it's I think we've got a very unique problem. We've got a very unique and very interesting thing to deal with. I just don't know how we got here, but we are here. So,
but it's fun as well. We have some fun. Yeah.
Let me put it this way, right? It is very fun. It is very fun. Let me put it this way. I think in terms of a context, and you will probably also give me your point of view when it comes to Kenya. There are certain countries, based on how colonization happened, that it engraved a particular way of doing things, which in some cases you look and you wonder what would be the use case beyond translation, because they might not care about translation. For instance, I grew up in the Congo. My dad was never allowing me to speak Venek growing up.
Only French.
Only French. But that will be different here. A child will be encouraged to actually speak his mother tongue from growing up.
They've actually got blue in Zulu.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
so you do have those differences where now imagine the attitude of someone in Congo towards their particular, vernacular language. If you grew up, let's say, in the city, for them, it's all the questions comes into where am I going to use it? Why am I going to use it? When am I going to use it? I'm not using it for fun. I'm not using it to, to make moves on let's say on a girl. I'm not using it at school. I'm not using it. The government is not enforcing it as something that should happen. So from a professional perspective, I'm not going to use it, because even there it's even worse. So you only use it from a social perspective. And once you start using it from a social perspective, that's when you start having those, sometimes the code switch or another dialect that start coming up, because you didn't learn it from when you were growing up. You only got from a certain time. And now when you engage, sometimes you are saying certain word in Swahili and then you say in French. And now you are creating something that's now new. And then if it's cool enough, then everyone
everyone
takes,
in.
and then that's how we then gonna be talking, right? But then as soon as you go into the office with your peers, you're not going into that space. So it's got an emotional aspect. Yeah, it also has an emotional aspect to it, because you don't want to be seen as the one slightly less educated because of the accent. So that's how it's seen in Congo. If you have your French with a little bit of a influence of a native local accent, the perception is of, it's usually, and it's unfortunate. It's something that has been, that's how most people would even view stuff. So that's why, from a professional perspective, you would hardly see like what happens here, where it's so refreshing that you can find a colleague who goes to another colleague and then they want to ask about a document in isiZulu. And then that's just fine, right? Or they want to have an engagement in a particular way. Yes, the professional language is a particular one, but you still have those other aspects. So what they're rather looking at now is mostly looking at English. Why? Because they constantly want to look at what is the way to get out. Do you understand? So what is the way to get out of where I am, which will have to be English. And for me to get to another place, I either have to speak French or I speak English. So you have those
like
interests. Yes. So we've got very, and I think what we're doing has got a very interesting flavor, and so that's where I'm like, some of the challenges are not even technological related with what we're doing, but we have to solve them as technical people, but it's beyond.
I'm actually glad you brought up that issue with the French in Congo, because that's actually something really interesting that keeps popping up for me. Two countries. I won't say which two countries. The viewers may disagree, but country A. There was someone I actually met, and I actually because it's partly my job, I actually kind of like to ask, how do you say this in your language? How do you say hi? What that kind of thing, and there was kind of this perception where he was like almost offended, like no, I speak English. This is not a necessary thing. You don't have to talk to me about this. Very unprofessional. And then in country B, they actually sent us. It was a long. I think it was like 20 pages or something. They sent us like a very long document in their own language. No English version.
No English, nothing.
And this is like at the highest level professional institution, which just goes to show there's like a big difference there. These people are like, no, we use this language everywhere. This is our language. We'll put it on documents, formal, all of that. Okay, like, this is how we do business.
Yeah.
And that's actually really gonna really inform those kinds of decisions. Because between that one and that one, I think on that side, specifically the African proposition, the option would be huge. In the first place, it might be a little bit shaky.
But I think from the French place as well, what I'm seeing, which then becomes a lot interesting, is the aspects of because of what they have to deal with, because of the professional side of things, they then also find spaces where the culture is not being preserved. And that's where, the work we do and the way we make it accessible to them becomes also interesting and useful to someone to understand, where's my culture from? Because you find that there are people there that they've got no understanding of. And language is a very important part of one's culture. So it becomes very important to still have. So you then find that on the other side, the interest will be from a different perspective. And on the other side, it will be from probably a learning and an engagement perspective, which gets, to be quite interesting. So
yeah, there's actually the one word that I'm always kind of using for I'm always kind of trying to explain. It does not translate well into English. So it's a Shona word, and it's not like a commonly used word, but you want to say a beautiful woman, you can say charakadenga. Charakadenga. Charakadenga.
So
okay, you don't know how to. You don't need to know how to say the word. Okay, I'm getting somewhere anyway. So
but I want you to say it again.
Charakading. TSVARAKADENGA.
So, okay. Okay,
Let me finish the story. Let me finish the story.
finish.
Okay. So if I was to say that in English, it just means beautiful woman, right? But if you look at the etymology, chara, as in a piece, a fragment, ka, small, denga, heaven. So it's actually, we're actually saying small piece of heaven. So that's not going to come across in the English.
No.
So as soon as we, as soon as we drop our language and we go into English, there's kind of we've kind of lost like a little bit of how we're trying to communicate as a people.
I agree, because within our discoveries, right, we picked up as well that from a African language perspective, what has been the beauty is that we've been simple and literal, and that has made it quite easier for someone to understand. So when someone explains to me what this means, right, like a long word, which we don't have, for instance, English, it might be like one word, but then in whatever other language, it sounds like a sentence. It's because I think they were great at explaining what something looks like and is versus giving a name that might not have a particular meaning to something, right? So if it's the table, it's just the table. But then in another language, the explanation of it would have been the structural aspect of the table. It's got 4 things and it's got that particular thing. And that becomes quite an easy way to also explain certain things. And that's why, from our perspective, when we look at bringing it from an early childhood development, the aspect of that is probably the connection to what the meaning is, and then the simplification of how you want to explain something versus the difficulty of, for instance, what word could I use? Ephemerism or psycho whatever, blah, 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 right? If someone were to then explain it, for instance, in another language, or if they had a similar word for it, it wouldn't have just been one word which you have to go and find the Latin meaning of it, whatever, but it would have been an explanation of that from an action-based perspective, which you then kind of understand and make sense of. And we see a lot of those within what we do, which I think is very interesting. And it's an amazing approach which we still can't lose, because it's gotten to some simplification of explanation of things that's happened. And I know that's where things get very difficult as well when it comes to text to speech, for instance. And I had a chat with Chido. I'm like, listen, sometimes if I need to have that. So we need to have that. Now, the way you're pronouncing whatever you said, which I wanted to get, right?
Oh, wow.
When you spell it, it starts with probably TS, right? You said TS.
TSVA.
TSV, right? When I hear it, I don't need a V there.
But
right? And if I now use how we would pronounce it in another language, right? We could have used CH. For instance, my surname, Chulu, right? Chulu is CHU. I mean, CHULU. Then you find in another part of Zambia, Chulu is also TSHU. But they will still, when you hear it, it still sounds like it's ch, right? And then you go somewhere else, someone will then tell you, you can put an X.
So throw an X there.
So those complexities come back to the tech, because what speech to text, for instance, hears is you saying, probably constantly saying Chulu, and everyone would say it differently. But now you have to now figure out if that person that said it is actually saying it with an X or with a TS or with a CH.
Okay,
and the moment it transcribes wrong, and then you give it to someone else, automatically they will tell you that, nope, this is completely wrong.
That's nonsense.
Someone is giving me looks, I'm not going to continue with
Okay.
but
Yes. Yes. Okay.
I think we've
It
reached.
appears we've hit our time.
They forgot that Ishe and Kim just talk all the time,
They
and
forgot we were just vibing, but we shall continue this conversation over pizza. You're buying. I left my credit card at home.
I'm eating as well. So please.
Yes. Okay.
But thank you very much, guys,
Thanks.
for having
Thanks.
me and for having us and for this. I think it's going to be a very interesting space to hear what is happening and how it's being done and documenting the process as well and what's going on. So looking forward to watch and hear and listen to more of your guys' stuff. So
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on a Friday of all days as well.
Yeah, I forgot it's a Friday.
Okay. For the Vambo AI in Africa podcast, I'm Ishe, and you people have been great.